Welcome back, game developers. Today I'm going to show you how to make the game Pong using no behaviors and using pure code. All right, let's get started. First thing you're going to do is going to hit New, and we're going to create a new project. We're going to call it Pong, and we're going to use a viewport size of 854 pixels wide by 480 pixels tall. Let's go ahead and optimize it for pixel art and hit Create. All right, here we are. This is your layout, and we're going to start by renaming the layout Object Database. And this is where we're going to make templates of all the different objects we're going to use in our game. So let's start by creating the logo. So we're going to double click the void there, the white space, and we're going to add a sprite. Once you've selected sprite, you'll see your cursor turns into a crosshair there. Once you click, it'll actually spawn the sprite editor. And we're going to go ahead and change the size of this sprite to 500 pixels tall. And if you hold Control while you scroll your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. So we're going to write the name Pong down here, and then we're going to use the space here in just a second. So let's start by selecting the pencil, and let's choose a dark color. That works. You can change the size of your brush here. I'm going to keep mine at about 6. All right, go ahead and write the word Pong. Oh, gorgeous, look at that. Boom. Okay, now we're going to select this dotted line here, this rectangle, and we're going to highlight the whole thing. We're going to press Control-C to copy it. You might need to allow. Try that again, Control-C, and then Control-V to paste. There it is. All right, now we're going to use the paint bucket tool, and we're going to select a different color. I like blue, so I'm going to use blue. I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of these letters here. And then finally, we're going to use our square tool. We're going to grab that, and we're going to bring it down here. And we're just going to offset it, and that's going to give our word a little bit of a shadow there. Look how nice that is. Boom. Once you've done that, you can hit the crop button here. Boink. And then the last thing we're going to do is over here for the origin point. You can see it's off to the side. We're going to bring it right down here. We're just going to click, and that's going to set the origin to the center of it. The origin is where the point is calculated for its coordinate. So that's going to matter later. But go ahead and just set it to the center, and then you can hit X. And there is your logo. Let's go ahead and rename this logo. Boom. All right, so there's our first object. Next, let's make the paddles for our game. So we're going to double click again. Going to add another sprite. And this will be player 1. I'm going to have player 1 be have a purplish paddle. We're going to use the fill tool here. Go ahead and fill it in and hit X. There you go. And let's do one more. So add another sprite. There we go. And this is player 2. I'm going to have their paddle be kind of a reddish color. Boom. There you go. All right. Now we're going to change the size of these. So I can just click it once, and then I can grab this handle here and resize it to about the size of a paddle. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, we can see the size here is 22 by 93. I'm just going to copy that, Control-C. I'm going to click my other paddle and change its size. I'm going to paste that right in there and hit Enter. Nice. Now let's rename our paddles. This first one is going to be player 1, and the second one is going to be player 2. Okay, we got our paddles. We're going to need a few more things. We're going to need the ball for them to hit back and forth, so that's going to be another sprite. And I'm going to have the ball be kind of a greenish color. That looks good. And I'm going to change its size to be maybe 7 by 7. And then I'm going to change its name to be ball. Done. All right, we got our ball there. Okay, and then if you've ever played Pong, you know that they divide the screen with a dotted line. So let's go ahead and make just one dotted line. It's going to be another sprite. And I'm going to use kind of a light color, fill it in, and then just resize it to about the size of a dashed line. Okay, this doesn't really matter just as long as it's about that size. It's going to make a whole bunch of them. It's just going to go right down the center. Okay, let's go ahead and call that line. All right. Now we need just a few more things. We're going to double click again, and now we're going to add some text. Go ahead and click once, it spawns it. And we're going to change the properties of this text. So once it's been highlighted, we can come over here to the properties, scroll down, and we want to, let's increase the size a little bit. Okay, and then we also want to change the horizontal alignment to be center. And then we want to change the origin to be center. And again, the origin is the point at which the coordinate is calculated from. So putting it in the center is just going to make it a lot easier to place. And finally, we'll change the vertical alignment to be center. There we go. Okay, so we got our text, we got our two paddles, our ball, our dotted line, and our Pong logo. Last thing we need is a background. So let's double click one last time and add a sprite. And this is going to be your background, so I'm going to choose more of a dark color. All right, that looks good. Okay, once you've added your color, go ahead and hit the origin point. And we're going to change its origin point to the top left corner. So that coordinate would be 0, 0. And again, that's just going to make it easier to place later. Okay, let's rename it to be background, so just BG. And you can shrink this, it really doesn't matter. Okay. All right, that's all the objects we need. We can actually start creating this game. So over in our layouts, we're going to right click and we're going to add a new layout with an event sheet. And we're going to name this layout title screen. And we're going to name its event sheet title screen. Okay. And when you double click title screen, over here in the properties, you can see the event sheet that's paired to it. And we definitely want the title screen event sheet. Okay. We're going to make one more layout, add a layout. This time, add layout only. And we're going to call it game. And that second event sheet that we have sitting there, that's just empty, we're going to rename that game. And on our game layout, let's just make sure it's paired. You can see it's not using any event sheets. So let's go ahead and set it to game. The event sheet is where all the code is. So you just want to make sure that the code is going to run on the layout. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the title screen. So go to your title screen event sheet, and the first thing we're going to do is create a function. So go ahead and right click the screen and do add function, and let's call this make title screen. Now functions are just custom chunks of code that you can call from your events. So our make title screen function is basically going to create the background, create the logo, place some text. Okay, so let's add an action and let's do system, create object, and we're going to create our background at the coordinates 0, 0. And then we are going to change the size of the background. So we're going to go down to set size in the size and position section. Set size, and the width is going to be the width of the viewport. So we could say viewport right of layer 0. We only have one layer, and it's currently layer 0. We can see that right here. And then the height is going to be viewport bottom. So basically, we're just making our background the same size as our screen. Okay, then we're going to create our logo. So system, create object. I'm going to create our logo, and that's going to be on layer 0. The x coordinate is going to be viewport right divided by 2. That'll put you at the center of the screen. And the y coordinate is going to be viewport bottom divided by 2. And that'll put it right in the center of the screen. Next, we're going to create our text object that says press enter to play. So add action, system, we're going to create another object. This one is going to be your text. And it's going to be at the similar location, so viewport right divided by 2, and then viewport bottom minus 50. And that'll put it at the bottom of the screen and then just a little bit up. Okay, finally we need to set what the text actually says. So we'll say text. We'll come down to set text under the text area. And we want it to say, quote, press enter to play, end quote. Okay, so we've created our function, but now we actually need to call it so that the code runs. So let's add a new event, and we're going to say system on start of layout. So at the beginning of your current level. Hit next, and then we're going to call our function. So functions, make title screen. So at the beginning of your layout, it's going to go ahead and call your function, make title screen. So then this function will be called and this code will be executed. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's go to title screen and hit play up here at the top. And there it is. Now we can see that not all of our text displayed. So what we have to do is come back to our object database and just make our text box longer. Let's give that a try. Title screen and hit play. Ah, there we go, that works. Good. Okay, and now we want it so that when you press enter, it's actually going to take you to your game, right? So we're going to need to add another plugin. So go back to your object database, double click off to the side, and we're going to add keyboard. And that's going to make it so that we can code some stuff using the keyboard. Go ahead and hit insert. You can see that this object is now available for your entire project. So go back to your event sheet for title screen. We're going to make a new event. This time we're going to do keyboard, on key pressed, and then we are going to choose the enter key. Now you can just press a different key on your keyboard, right, and use whatever you want, but we told the player that we're going to be using enter, so let's use enter. Okay, so when the enter key is pressed, we want to go to your game layout. So that'd be system, go to layout, and then game. All right, let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's go to title screen, hit play. We can see it loads up just fine, and if we hit enter, it takes us to our next layout, which currently has nothing, but it works, and that's the point. Now's a good time to save your project. I like to use cloud save, so menu, project, save as, cloud save, and then this way you can open your project on any computer, it doesn't matter. So go ahead and save your project now, and then we'll come back and keep working. Okay, so now let's actually start working on the game Pong. So go ahead and head over to your game event sheet, and first we're going to create 8 variables. So we're going to right click and do add global variable, and your first variable is going to be player 1's y coordinate. It'll be a number variable, and initial value 0 is fine. Okay, go ahead and make the second variable. This is going to be player 2's y coordinate. Then we need variables to keep track of the player's score. So we'll do player 1 score, and then we'll do player 2 score. Okay, then we're going to need 2 variables to keep track of the ball and what's going on with it. So go ahead and add another variable. This one we're going to call ball slope y. And it's going to start with initial value of 2. Then we're going to need ball speed. It's going to start at 0. Then we're going to need ball start speed. This is the speed it starts at. We're going to start that at 4. And then finally we need a way to know what's the maximum amount of points a player can earn. We're going to call that max score, and we're going to set that at 5. All right, we have our variables set up. Now we're going to create our functions, and then finally we'll actually start coding the instructions. If you press Q, you can create a comment. So beneath here is going to be all of our functions. So the first function we're going to create actually sets up all of the pieces we need to play the game. So let's go ahead and right click again and do add function, and let's call it create game. All right, so our first action is going to be to create the background. So add action, system, create object, choose your background, and then that will be created at an X and Y of 0. Then we need to set the size of the background. So now we'll choose background, and we will set its size down here in size and position. And the width, again, is going to be viewport right, parentheses 0, and the height is going to be viewport bottom, parentheses 0. Again, that just makes the background the same size as your screen. Okay, now we're going to create our paddles. So add action, system, create object. We're going to choose player 1. And the X coordinate, we want it just a little bit off the edge. So we'll put it at an X coordinate of 30. And then the Y coordinate, we want in the center of the screen. So that's going to be viewport bottom, parentheses 0, divided by 2. And that'll put it right in the center of the screen on the Y axis. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for player 2, system, create object, player 2. Okay, now its X coordinate is going to be 30 pixels off the right side of the screen. So that would be viewport right minus 30, and the Y coordinate will be the same, viewport bottom divided by 2. And that's going to create your paddles on the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen. Now that the paddles are created, let's go ahead and make sure that the variable is going to match its current coordinate. So we'll add an action, system, and we will set the value of our variable. Okay, player 1's Y coordinate needs to be the same as the paddle. So we'll do player 1 dot Y, and that's going to give us the Y coordinate of the player 1 paddle. Okay, we'll do the same thing for player 2. System, set value. Player 2Y needs to be the same as player 2 dot Y. And if you hit enter, it'll just auto-complete for you. Okay, next we're going to create the text that's going to show the score. So add action, system, create object. Let's create the text. And the X coordinate is the middle of the screen. So that's viewport right divided by 2. And the Y coordinate, we want this to display at the top of the screen. So let's just give it a Y coordinate of about 75. That'll be about 75 pixels from the top. You can change that and place it wherever you like. Okay, and then let's set what that text box actually says. So text. I'm going to come down to set text. There it is. And we're going to have it say player 1 score, the name of that variable. And then we're going to use the AND symbol to connect it to some just text, a string of text, right? So we'll do quote and then a whole bunch of spaces. Boom, another quote. So now we just have a whole bunch of spaces that will be displayed. Okay, then we're going to do the AND symbol again. That's Shift 7. And then player 2 score. Player 2 score. So when it gets displayed, it should say 0, 0. All right, now we're going to create the dotted line that runs down the center. To do that, we're going to use a loop. So you're going to right-click the function, and we're going to add a sub-event. And this is going to be a loop. So going to System, and then select for. Okay, so this for loop is going to repeat the actions as many times as we ask it to. We're going to give it the name I, and our start index will be 0, and our end index will be 10. All right, so it's going to repeat this action essentially 11 times. 10 times plus one more. That's 0. Okay, so what's the action that's being repeated? Well, it's going to create one of these dotted lines for us. So system, create object, our dotted line. The x coordinate is going to be the center of the screen. So again, that's viewport right, parentheses 0, divided by 2. And the y coordinate, this is where it's a little tricky, right? We're going to reference our loop here. So we're going to say loop index. If you have many loops, this is where you have to specify. So the one called I, right? That's what we wrote right here. And then we're going to multiply it times some number, right? Which is essentially the spacing between each one. So let's do 60 pixels. Okay, so basically what happens is when this loop gets called the first time, its index is 0. So 0 times 60 is 0. So it's going to put that first line right at the top of the screen. Then the loop is going to get called a second time. And now it's going to be 1, a loop index of 1. So what's 60 times 1? 60. So it's going to place that second dotted line at a y coordinate of about 60. And then the loop is now on 2. What's 2 times 60? 120, right? So this is going to slowly create your line going all the way down the screen. All right, now the last step is to create our ball. So we're going to right-click your function again. We're going to add another sub-event. And this one is going to trigger once. So we're going to come down here under System to trigger once while true. And our action is going to be to create the ball at the center of the screen. So create object, create our ball. Okay. Middle of the screen would be viewport right, divided by 2, and viewport bottom, divided by 2. That's smack dab in the center of the screen. Okay, the last step in this function is to give our ball some speed, and we want to set it to our ball start speed. So we'll add an action, system, we're going to set value, we're going to set ball speed to equal ball start speed. Okay, our function is created. Now we need to call it and see if it works, right? So let's add a new event, and we'll say system on start of layout, call our function, create game. So basically what happens is we start on the title screen, right? It loads up all of this stuff. When the player presses enter, it takes them to your game layout. Okay, and when your game layout gets called on the start of the layout, it's going to call your create game function, which is going to create all of this stuff. So let's see if it works. Let's go to title screen and hit play. All right, here's our title screen. If we press enter, it takes us to our game level, and you can see that we have our paddles, our score, our dotted line, and there's our ball. Man, I think I might go for a darker color on my ball. All right, so our function worked, and we saw that maybe a darker color on the ball would be better. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice dark, like a dark purple. Boom, there we go. That'll stand out a little bit better. All right, so now let's make it so that the paddles can actually move, right? Doesn't that sound good? So let's go back to our game event sheet. Let's go ahead and add a comment with Q. And this is going to be our game events. All right, so let's code our first paddle. This is going to be player 1 paddle. We're going to add an event. It's going to be keyboard. And we're going to do key is down. Okay, so this is going to be when player 1 is moving their paddle up. So I'm going to use the W key, since this is going to be a 2-player game. And when the W key is down, we are going to subtract 1 from player 1's y coordinate. And then we're going to update the position of that paddle. So player 1 paddle, set Y, and it's going to be player 1 Y. Okay, let's go ahead and give that a try. Okay, and you can see when we hold down the W key, our paddle starts to move up. But that's pretty slow. So let's change that 1 to a little bit larger of a number. Let's go, instead of subtract 1, let's say subtract 7. Okay, and now let's do the same thing for going down. So an event, keyboard, key is down. And this time we're going to say the S key. And when the S key is being held down, we want to add 7 to player 1's Y coordinate. And then we want to update the paddle position. So we can just copy that event from line 5. We can just paste it right down here. Boink. There we go. Let's go ahead and give it a try. All right, our paddle's moving a lot faster and we can go up and down. But our paddle can go all the way off screen. That's not going to work for me. So let's go ahead and add another condition to our paddle events. So when W is down and, let's add another condition, and compare variable, player 1Y is greater than 0. So basically, once Y is -1 or less, it's going to stop working. Okay, we'll do the same thing down here. We'll add another condition, and it'll be system, compare variable, player 1Y, as long as it is less than viewport bottom, bottom of the screen. Okay, so as long as the paddle is between, or really, as long as the paddle is on screen, it will move. And if it starts to go off screen, it'll stop moving. So let's go ahead and give that a try. Okay, I go up, and look at that, it just freezes right there at the bottom. Excellent, so it's working. Awesome. Now let's do the same thing for the other paddle. Okay, Q to enter a comment. This is going to be player 2 paddle. And the comments are really just for us to keep things organized and easy to see. So we can do add an event, keyboard, key is down, and this time it's going to be the up arrow. And we will subtract from player 2's Y coordinate. We're going to subtract 7. And then we're going to update player 2's position. So set Y, and that's going to equal player 2's Y coordinate. Okay, same thing, add an event, keyboard, key is down. I'm going to do the down arrow. And this time we're going to add to player 2's Y coordinate. We're going to add 7. Now we need to update its position, so we can just copy this line of code by selecting it once, doing Control-C to copy, clicking this line of code, and pressing Control-V to paste. There you go. And then we need to prevent the paddle from leaving the screen, so we need to copy this same idea. So we'll add another condition by right-clicking, add another condition. System, we'll compare variable, player 2's Y coordinate. As long as it is greater than 0, then you can press up. And down here, we'll add another condition. And as long as player 2's Y coordinate is less than viewport bottom, you'll be able to press down. All right, let's go ahead and give that a try. All right, we can see both paddles can move independently of each other, and it's working. Awesome. All right, next, let's code the ball so it can start moving. Okay, so hit Q, and we're just going to type ball. And this is going to require just one event, which is kind of nice. So add event, it's going to be system, every tick, so basically always, we are going to change the ball's position. So ball, and then we're going to set position. And its x coordinate is going to be ball dot x, so what its current coordinate is, plus ball speed, okay, that variable we created. And the y coordinate is going to be ball dot y plus the ball slope y. Hit done. So how this works is ball speed at the beginning is 0, but then we set it to 4. So what that means is basically every tick, it's going to move that ball to the right 4 pixels. Because if you add 4 to its current position, it's going to move it to the right. Same thing for its y coordinate. It's going to take the ball and it's going to move it in the direction up or down of whatever ball slope y is. And right now it's set at 2. So it's going to take that ball and it's going to move it down 2 pixels. So let's go ahead and test this and see what it looks like. All right, so you can see that our ball is actually moving now. Great. Now's a good time to save your project. Go ahead and hit that save button. All right, so now what happens when the ball actually hits a paddle? That's what we're going to code next. So go ahead and hit Q. Ball hits player 1. Okay, so how would we know if the ball actually hit the paddle? Well, if the ball's coordinate is anywhere within the paddle, then we know it's a hit. Okay, so let's go ahead and code that. All right, so we're going to do an event, and we're going to do system, and we're going to do is between values right here, is between values. And the value is going to be ball dot x. Okay, and we want to know is its x coordinate where the paddle is. So the lower bound would be player 1 dot x minus half of the paddle's width. So it'd be player 1 dot width divided by 2. And the upper bound would be the other direction, right? So it'd be player 1 dot x plus half of the width of the paddle. Okay, but that's not good enough because at that point, the ball could hit up here above the paddle or beneath the paddle, and that would technically count, right? So now we need to add a second condition to limit it. So we're going to right-click our condition and add another condition, and we'll do system is between values, and we'll do ball.y. The lower bound is going to be player 1.y minus half the height of the paddle. So player 1.height divided by 2. And the upper bound would be player 1.y plus half its height. Player 1.height divided by 2. So if the ball's coordinate lies inside of these two conditions, we know it's a hit. Now, when the ball hits the paddle, we want it to reverse directions. And so we can do that by simply multiplying ball speed times -1. That way, if it's positive, meaning it's traveling to the right, it'll flip around and go left. And if it's going left, you know, what's a negative times a negative? It's positive, right? So we'll flip it around and move it to the right. So we'll do add action, system, and we will set value ball speed to be ball speed times -1. And this time symbol is just shift 8. That's how we get that. Shift and the number 8. Okay, let's go ahead and set this same thing up for player 2. So let's go ahead and hit Q. We'll say ball hits player 2. And let's go ahead and copy this whole event. So just select it and do Control C. Then select your comment and do Control V to paste it. Now check this out. If you left click one of these conditions, you can right click it and do replace object. And we can replace player 1 with player 2. Check that out. Now it says player 2x. right? And it's all about player 2. We can do that for its second condition, replace object, and replace player 1 with player 2. All right, now before we test it, let's go ahead and go to the top and set ball slope to equal 0. And then go ahead and hit play, and let's see what happens. All right, when the ball hits player 2, it reverses direction, and so on and so forth. Now, a game like this would be super boring, so next we're going to make it so that when the ball hits the edges of the paddle, we can start getting an angle on the ball. So it can start traveling, on a diagonal.